this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Nikki Haley just absolutely botching this question on the American Civil War. Obviously, this question was meant as a gotcha to her, but to be fair, I think the question was fairly easy. So she blew it. For people who want to defend her, she's already kind of tried to clean it up today. So there's no point in being like, but technically she was correct about the history, blah, blah, blah. She's already walked it back. So we'll be talking about that. Also a bit about the border crisis. We'll get into that. And Lauren Boebert, I saw something about her not running for re-election or something. And I was like, oh, that's probably a good thing considering but controversy, and she barely won before, but she's actually just going to another district to compete. So I want to give my thoughts about that. So interesting show today, especially with this Nikki Haley stuff. That is definitely the top story of the day. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, I encourage you to go ahead and support if you can. You go to the donate page. It does cost a stream, run my website, all that stuff. So thank you to those of you who do that. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. Also, you guys can check out different merchandise available at the Black Tea News store. We got different shirts. We got mugs and all sorts of stuff you guys can check out there. Also, I do write books, so you can find me on Amazon. I have 17 that are published. 2 are nonfiction. The rest are fiction, since we're talking about the subject of the Civil War today. I do have a historical fiction fantasy book. It's kind of like Civil War meets X-Men. So I encourage you guys to go, check it out. And again, I'm on Amazon. It's on paperback. It's on ebook. And this particular series is on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have that subscription, you guys can get that as well. But I'm not saying it's the most historically accurate thing ever, but it's very entertaining. It does have interesting tidbits of history in it. So go ahead and check it out. I also make my own covers, by the way. So people like my covers, and I thank them for their compliments. But I do have not a meme, but something funny to start out with. I do like to start off with funny things. Shout out to people in the comments. Thank you for being here, and thank you to those who watch back later. I do try to look at your comments if I can while everything is live, but sometimes I'm trying to keep all my thoughts and stuff together, so I can't address like each person. I do read super chats as long as they're not crazy or anything. So crazy as in like inappropriate. And if one slips by me, I apologize because I'm a bit naive, but at times. But anyway, thank you guys for watching live. I do want to start off with I guess this quote from Vivek, and I'm not always a fan of Vivek, but this was pretty funny. Dealing with Nikki Haley, and so she said a comment. If you're not aware of it, we'll get to it on her Civil War comments. But turns out Nikki Haley knows as little about the Civil War as she does about the Ukraine war. But whatever war it is, I'm sure she's in favor of it. So some things about complaints about that Vivek has about Haley, I have about Vivek as well. I think they both sometimes will tell people what they kind of want to hear. But he's been going hard at her about being part of the industrial military complex and stuff. And at the last debate, he went in on her and asked about like which areas of Ukraine would you want to give to defend or make sure they didn't give back or something. I don't remember the question exactly, but he wanted like 3 regions named, and she didn't name them like immediately. And so people were like, oh my gosh, she didn't name all the regions. She did end up naming like 3 parts. One was like, I think maybe she misspoke or something. Because I think one of the answers she gave wasn't accurate, but it was a viral moment. So people were like, oh, they didn't even know what they're talking about when they talk about the Ukraine war. So that was the narrative. So him dunking on her about the Civil War thing is just a continuation of that narrative. So good joke. It's a good dunk. Credit to Vivek there. Credit to Vivek there. So let's get to her comment. So last night I was at my parents' house. It was after Bible study, and I was just kind of chilling, scrolling through Twitter, and then I saw someone's comment about Nikki Haley saying that she was asked about the Civil War and the cause of it and wouldn't mention slavery. And so people are flipping out about it. And I'm like, that sounds pretty bad. I'm like, if it's real, I'm assuming there's got to be some video of it. So I start searching, and lo and behold, I found videos, and then it became mainstream news. And people are talking about it everywhere. CNN's even dogging on her. She's kind of like a bit of a, I mean, nobody really likes Republicans, but she's kind of more like the darling because she's more like the establishment sort of candidate. So, but even CNN was just kind of like, what the heck? And Fox News, there's a clip I saw of Fox News where they're just kind of bending over backwards to kind of defend her. And they're like, well, good job. She didn't give in to the trolls or answer the way that they wanted it answered. I'm like, no, guys, just stop. I'm like, what? Why are they going so hard trying to protect Haley here? And let's just go ahead and start with the actual comments that she made. Hopefully you guys can hear the questioner, but the questioner asks like, what started the American Civil War? And then in the middle, after she says something, she asked like, how would you describe this? What do you think happened? And he's like, well, I'm not running for president. And then after her more word salad, he says, well, after, I would think in 2023, like you should be able to say that slavery was a cause or something. So just that's a summary of what the questioner's comments were, in case you can't hear it too well in this particular clip. Here we go.
Please, what was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was? I'm sorry?
I'm not running for president. I want to see your view on the cause of the Civil War.
I mean, I think it always comes down to the role of government. We need to have capitalism. We need to have economic freedom. We need to make sure that we do all things so that individuals have the liberties so that they can have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do or be anything they want to be without government getting in the way.
Thank you. And then in the year 2023, it's astonishing to me that you answer that question without mentioning the word slavery.
What do you want me to say about slavery?
You answered my question. Thank you.
Next question.
Oh boy. Here's a little snippet. There was like a longer, like 2-minute clip of this Fox conversation. I didn't want to show the whole thing, so I'm just going to show this little snippet of them trying to defend her.
In that moment, I think she handled it quite well, considering and didn't give in to what would clearly, as you point out, was a gotcha question.
No, she didn't handle that well at all. Some people were pointing out that it kind of reminded them of another young woman from South Carolina.
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that they should our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries. So we will be able to build up our future.
Yeah. So I was not a fan of that answer. And when I was like listening to it, my sister kind of like, what's happening? And I replayed it back and be like, this is such a terrible answer. So you can say, technically, is she right that it was about how the government should run and their role and people's freedoms and states' rights and the economy? Sure. Absolutely. But it's which states' rights, their rights to do what, their freedoms to do what, their economics tied into what. It's pretty simple. So people point it to there's a one-word answer that people are looking for. You can say obviously it's more complex than that, but people are pointing to this clip from The Simpsons when Apu had to take like a citizen test. There's a really simple answer people want.
Question. What was the cause of the Civil War?
Actually, there were numerous causes. Aside from the obvious schism between abolitionists and anti-abolitionists, economic factors, both domestic and international, played a significant...
Yeah. Just say slavery.
Slavery it is, sir.
Yes, I am a citizen.
Yeah, it could have really been I mean, I don't think she should have gave a one-word answer like it was just slavery, but you can't deny that. So there are people who are like, oh no, that's not true. Was it slavery was more complex? Again, you can say it's more complex, but it's all those, many of those things were tied into it. And even when I had posted that I was going to talk about this today, someone on YouTube was like, well, Abraham Lincoln said that he would keep slavery if it would keep the Union together. You know that, right? And was just doing all this defense and stuff. I'm like, you could literally just read the succession documents from states to know that slavery is a very core part of the reason why I'm not the Union wanted to keep everything together and didn't want more states to secede. That's true. But why did those states secede? Now, she's from South Carolina. I'm going to read an excerpt of some of the South Carolina Declaration of Secession from 1860. You guys can go read the whole thing later, but I assure you I have read the whole thing. But let's go ahead and read some of it together, just to put some things in perspective. And by the way, Nikki Haley, she knows these things, and she cleaned it up today already, or tried to. I don't think her cleanup was great either, but we'll get into that. The victory of the Republican presidential candidate Abraham Lincoln in the 1860 elections convinced South Carolina legislators that it was no longer in their state's interest to remain. Well, that's a summary. We'll just jump to the actual thing. The state of South Carolina, having resumed her separate and equal place among nations, deems due to herself that the remaining United States of America and the nations of the world that she should declare the immediate causes which have led to this act. An increasing hostility on the part of non-slave holding states to the institution of slavery has led to a disregard of their obligations, and the laws of the general government have ceased to affect the objects of the Constitution. The states of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa have enacted laws which either nullify the acts of Congress or render useless any attempt to execute them. In many of these states, the fugitive is discharged from service or labor claimed, and in none of them has a state government compiled with the stipulation made in the Constitution. For 25 years, this agitation has been steadily increasing until it has now secured to its aid the power of the common government, observing the forms of the Constitution. A sectional party has found within the article establishing the executive department that the means of subverting the Constitution itself. A geographical line has been drawn across the Union, and all the states north of that line have united in the election of a man to the high office of the President of the United States, whose opinions and purposes are hostile to slavery. It's right there. It's right there. He is to be entrusted with the administration of the common government because he has declared that government cannot endure permanently half slave, half free, and that the public mind must rest in the belief that slavery isn't the course of ultimate extinction. On the 4th day of March next, this party will take possession of the government. It has announced that the South shall be excluded from the common territory, that the judicial tribunals shall be made sectional, and that the war must be waged against slavery until it shall cease throughout the United States. The guarantees of the Constitution will then no longer exist. The equal rights of the states will be lost. The slaveholding states will no longer have the power of self-government or self-protection, and the federal government will have become their enemy. We, therefore, the people of South Carolina, by our delegates in convention assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, have solemnly declared that the union heretofore existing between this state and other states of North America is dissolved, and that the state of the South Carolina has resumed her position among the nations of the world as a separate and independent state with full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And there's more to the document, but it's all still like around this subject. You can't get around it. So I'm not saying there's not more complicated things. She didn't even mention really more complicated things. She didn't. So I mean, Tom Cotton had a let me see if I can find his tweet really quick. He mentioned what it was about. Let me see. Cotton. I could paraphrase it, but it's Tom Cotton. I'm Tim Cotton. Tom Cotton. Here we go. I did like it, so I guess I could have just went to my liked page, but here we go. He said, the Civil War started because the American people elected an anti-slavery Republican as president, and Democrats revolted rather than accept minor restrictions on the expansion of slavery to the Western territories. So that's his tweet. He said, and today Democrats would soon rather tear the country apart than treat all citizens equally before the law, regardless of color. That's a good tweet. It's a true tweet. So no wonder why he was trending, because people were probably butthurt that he said that. It's still true. So DeSantis was asked about this, and he was asked about her comments, and he was also then asked the question himself. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
You know, I noticed that Nikki Haley has had some problems with some basic American history. She's asked a very simple question and responded with just really incomprehensible word salad about this and that. And, you know, what she asked the voter, what do you want her to say about this or that? And then now is taking different positions in this. And so I just think that this shows this is not a candidate that's ready for prime time. You know, she's gotten a pretty free ride from a lot of the corporate press. The minute that she faces any type of scrutiny, she tends to cave, and I think that that's what you saw yesterday. Not that difficult to identify and acknowledge the role slavery played in the Civil War, and yet that seemed to be something that was really difficult. And I don't even know what she was saying. If you listen to that answer, I know she's trying to clean it up. I know she's tried to blame a Democrat plant. Look, I mean, you're going to get asked a lot of questions. I mean, you're going to get asked a lot of tough questions. That's just the nature of this business. And I think that she showed time and time again that when it's time, when the lights get hot, that she wilts under pressure. And that was a good example last night.
Yeah, he's not wrong. You get asked a lot of questions, and you do have to be ready to, you know, take on the sort of gotchas. When I just some inside knowledge, different organizations send people to such things to get clips of people saying things that they can use against them. So I don't know if that man who asked the question worked for the Democrat Party. I don't know if he worked for some kind of other organization that's left wing. It could have been an organization that's associated with Ron or Never Back Down or some group with Vivek or whatever. It's possible. Anything is possible. He could just be someone who doesn't like her and who wants to get clarification on that question and tear her down, because he asked the question. He didn't give his name. He didn't give his party affiliation. So people are suspicious of him. But the reason why he asked the question is because there's past comments from Nikki Haley that made him assume that she would say something like what she said again. So I'm going to play a quick clip of CNN talking about let me wait on that. Let me play for you the past clip that I guess kind of gave that voter the curiosity and made him assume that she would probably have a bad answer today.
I mean, again, I think that as we look in government, as we watch government, you have different sides, and I think that you see passions on different sides, and I don't think anyone does anything out of hate. I think what they do is they do things out of tradition and out of beliefs of what they believe is right. I think you had one side of the Civil War that was fighting for tradition, and I think you had another side of the Civil War that was fighting for change. You know, at the end of the day, what I think we need to remember is that, you know, everyone is supposed to have their rights. Everyone's supposed to be free. Everyone's supposed to have the same freedoms as anyone else. So, you know, I think it was tradition versus change is the way I see it.
Tradition versus change on what?
On individual rights and liberty of people.
Yeah. So that was the past answer that made him think that I should ask this question. And he was not shocked really at the response, I guess, or maybe a little shocked, but was expecting something along the lines of what she said. So I don't think that not everybody in the South, of course, owned slaves, could afford to own slaves. Not everybody in the South probably had some kind of malice or hatred toward Black people or something like that. Were a ton of people apathetic to their plight? There are people in the North who are extremely apathetic to the plight of slaves. That's one reason why Uncle Tom's Cabin really opened up a lot of people's eyes, because they were just naive about it, out of sight, out of mind. And that's why Abraham Lincoln thinks the author of that book, and that book is what really started like the war and what really, you know, caused an end to slavery. But there were abolitionists out there who were trying to you know, wake people up and argue that these are our neighbors, you know, they're created in the image of God, just like us, and they don't deserve to be treated that way. And even if there were people who, I don't know, maybe agreed with that, they might not have been for full abolition, and they would refer like incrementalism and all sorts of stuff. So it took a minute. Did it need to take as long as it took? I guess when you had the incrementalists who were slowing up stuff, you know, it just took a minute. But no, I don't think everyone like was maliciously evil, but were they apathetic or contributing to something that was evil being done to our fellow man? Yes. And by the way, that happens today too. We'll get to that later. But it's just true that so much of this was revolved around slavery, like the economy and other stuff like that was tied up into it. And you can again look at the secession declaration, not just of South Carolina, but she's from South Carolina. She knows this. So she did come back and try to clean it up. So let's look at what she said as she cleaned it up.
Asked about the Civil War and what I think of the Civil War, what was the cause of the Civil War. Of course, the Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned, always the case. We know the Civil War was about slavery. But it was also more than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual. It was about the role of government. For 80 years, America had the decision and the moral question of whether slavery was a good thing and whether government economically culturally, any other reasons, had a role to play in that. By the grace of God, we did the right thing and slavery is no more. But the lessons of what that bigger issue with the Civil War are is that let's not forget what came out of that, which is government's role, individual liberties, freedom for every single person, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do and be anything you want to be without anyone or government getting in your way. That should be the goal of what we always try and take away from that, right? Because we never want to return back to that place. But we always want to remember the lesson of what it means to be a free individual and that everyone deserves to be a free individual. So we stand by that. I say that as a Southerner. I say that as a Southern governor who removed the Confederate flag off the State House grounds. And I say that as a proud American of how far we have come. So now I'll start. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself.
So I just want to make it clear that I'm not ragging on Nikki Haley because I think that she's actually a racist or something like that, or I think that she is pro-slavery. That's not why I'm talking about this because I think genuinely that was a terrible answer. And I think there's a lot of reasons to why perhaps it happened the way that it did. I mean, perhaps she was just totally caught off guard, and it still doesn't explain why it was such a terrible answer. But people like her, these politicians, they are trained. They have their stump speech. They say things over and over and over again. A lot of it doesn't feel organic. I mean, like, you know, I like Ron DeSantis, but you can tell like similar lines he says over and over and over again about the decline. You know, we have to fight the decline of America, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Like those are the things that he will normally say again and again and again. If you recall back the 2016 election, when there was a debate and Chris Christie just like took apart like Marco Rubio to the point where Rubio, he literally just kind of factory reset and started just repeating like literally something that he had just said. Because they are in part programmed to repeat things over and over and over again. So she's used to particular stump speech. She's used to saying things in modern, you know, context and stuff. So someone bringing up something from the 1800s is a little wild, but it's still a very easy thing to be able to explain. And it's especially since she knows the history, but her word salad, like, I'm glad that she clarified and was like, of course it was about slavery. Of course it was. And she went to the more too than that. She didn't really go into like other history sort of breaking down of history or whatever, but she just went into the individual freedoms and liberties, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And so what kind of like throws me for a loop is like, especially I guess with her comment last night, I was like, whose side are you on? Because the South believed that it was about their individual liberties and so on. And that's why they were so upset. And she talked about big government and the role of government. They felt that the government, that the other states were too overbearing and trying to, you know, cut them off at their knees with something that they felt was their right. So I think you got to be a lot clearer than what she was doing politically. There was absolutely no benefit to the answer that she gave, and it seemed like she was trying to take the answer for the Civil War question and to then bridge it into relevance today. And that's why she started talking about, I think, really the role of government and you know, shouldn't be too big and whatever, because we're conservatives. We don't want, you know, we do believe in limited government, etc. But that bridge there, I think, created confusion, because to me it sounds like whose side are you on? And I know what side she's on. She made it sort of clear, like in her you know, when in her cleanup, that, you know, everyone deserves individual liberty, as in the slaves who were being dehumanized and denied those rights, they deserved individual liberty. And she could have just said that, but I get what I think means there. And so the important lesson that she could have reiterated more clearly is that the horror of this, what happened in our country and the sin of slavery, and I do believe it was a sin, that you had these human beings who were denied their rights that are inalienable rights, and they needed to apply to all people. So this war was waged, and afterwards lessons we learned from it, etc., were that it's important to fight for everyone's human rights. And it would have been very easy to tie that to other things that Republicans care about. I don't know how much she cares about, but things like abortion and so on. Or she could have gone the other route of like Tom Cotton. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Tom Cotton. I was about to say Tim Cotton. It's Tom Cotton, the route that he went. And DeSantis also, when he was asked about it, mentioned, hey, getting rid of slavery is a proud Republican achievement.
What would your answer be to the question that Haley got in terms of the primary cause of the Civil War?
Of course, you have the issue of slavery. You had the states that were concerned about Lincoln interfering and potentially eliminating it. And they viewed it as a states' rights issue, not as a federal issue. And they were concerned that you have this Republican president may come in and get rid of the institution of slavery. And so that was, it's interesting because the Republican Party was founded to put a stop to the growth of slavery in this country. And the abolition of slavery was, to this day, remains the party's top achievement. And it was a partisan achievement because the people that were fighting Lincoln, the people that wanted to preserve slavery, they were Democrats. And so the Republican Party did that, and that's something that you should acknowledge and be proud of as a Republican.
Like, sometimes I hear Democrats talk about Republicans don't want to talk about history and they don't like history, etc. I'm like, Republicans love talking about history. What are you talking about? I love history. I'm so fascinated by history. I'm fascinated by the Civil War. As I said at the top of the hour, I do have a historical fiction fantasy book the series that I've written that takes place in the Civil War. So, I love history, and Republicans definitely like reminding people, and it's alarming how many people don't know that we were founded to end slavery. Like, that was the goal. There were people who were left the Democrat Party and tried to, there was a free soil party that didn't end up panning out, and people ended up joining the Republican Party. But there were people who wanted to keep kind of status quo of things, and they were the Whigs, and they ended up dying out, right? So Republican Party was, ended up emerging as a major party. But that was our founding. So when people bring that up, it's always a good time to defend your party and the role in this ending this atrocity that pretty much everyone universally agrees was a bad thing, but the bad thing was perpetrated by a major political party that still exists today. So yeah, when you can rub that in people's faces politically, it's good to do that. Instead, you have Biden dunking on Nikki Haley and people talking about, Republicans, and she was supposed to be the one who was sane, and even she can't mention that slavery had to do with the Civil War and etc. blah blah blah. So she just totally botches for herself. She totally botches for Republicans. And CNN had they've been talking about it, but there was an interesting clip that I wanted to show you guys, because I do agree with this last line here about the issue with Nikki Haley.
It's breathtaking. I mean, I had read the transcript, but I had not actually seen it. And it is just breathtaking when she says, what do you want me to say about slavery? I mean, that is her campaign in one question, right? It is like, who do you want me to be right now who do I need to morph into in order to never take Trump on?
Yeah, who do I need to morph into? I think that was really what that was about. Trying to be careful to not say it and give kind of like a soft, really safe as possible answer, because she doesn't want to risk upsetting someone who would be like, no, it wasn't about slavery. And there's people out there and the people have, come at me today already for that. But it's just, again, you just read documents from people who seceded. You can easily see that slavery played a huge role in all that. So she's always trying to appeal to someone, whether it's the corporate press or independents or whatever. I don't think she has many convictions. At least that's what it comes off to me. She's flip-flopped a lot. And when she's caught on some things, she'll be like, I never said that, like on the debate stage when everyone was ganging up on her, Vivek and DeSantis. And actually, I guess it was just mostly Vivek and DeSantis. But you know, she was like, I want everyone to have their names online. You can have your fake name in parentheses, but we need identification. And when she's called out on that, she's like, I didn't say that. Or when she's like, I believe that the parent, like they asked a question like, oh, should 12-year-olds, what happens when they want puberty blockers or whatever? And she's like, that's the government should stay out of it. Parents should handle it. And they're like, you would let parents mutilate the kids and all this stuff. And she's like, I never said that. So she gets caught and then she shifts. Or the media asks like, well, Ron DeSantis said some stuff about refugees in Gaza and we didn't like it. How do you feel about that? And she's like, America could always filter these people. And then she started getting pushback on that. And then she starts changing her tune. She doesn't come off as really having strong convictions. And so she made a choice and it was the wrong choice and she's being dunked on. To me, this kind of seems, we'll have to see how this plays out. But to me, this is worse than Gary Johnson's Aleppo moment. If you remember back in 2016, he was like, what is Aleppo? And people were dogging on him and stuff. But this is way worse to me, especially because you know that she knew the answer. But I think she just kind of was trying to search for how you would appeal to how do I not tick off the most people? What am I supposed to say here? And that's what she's searching for. And when she upsets people, then she changes her tune. And that's just how she operates. Like Ron DeSantis is like, I'll say whatever I say and I'll say what I feel is right and let the chips fall where they may. That's what he's been saying. And he's, you know, definitely the candidate who's like most to the right on issues. And Haley's filling it out, even like her subject of like how she handled like abortion and stuff. It's just like, what does everyone want to hear? You know, let me, you know, kind of tailor myself to be the least controversial. And I understand people want to win an election, and she's thinking about the general. But when you when you float like that, when you're like one of those inflatable people who just kind of flop in the wind and you don't appear to have some kind of moral spine, I don't know how you can expect to lead a party. And you're not going to lead them to any good direction because you're just going to fold every time you know, the Democrats maybe want something or you're going to be the queen of compromise. And then you're just going to continue to push the party into a direction that doesn't have any moral conviction to a place where, is it worth having one? So you got to be, if you're not different than the devil that people know, the people are going to stick with the devil they know. So you have to be able to convey your convictions in a way that is compelling and convincing, but to be so, I don't know, like wet bread, wet paper. When it comes to those things, people don't trust you. People won't trust you on your side, and people won't trust you all the way on the other side. And people will stick with the devil they know. It's just the truth. And in trying to, I don't know, not upset some kind of base that you perceive is out there. Like how many people would not vote for you because you said slavery? Like how many, what sect of the population were you trying to appease by just saying the easy answer? Because the independents and the Democrats and all those folks that you're appealing to aren't happy with you either. And I see people going out there defending her like, if the implication is that she's racist. No, the implication is that she's an idiot with no conviction. That's the problem. Who's made herself look bad, made the Republican Party look bad, missed enormous opportunity. Like someone today quoted like something that she said, and said, I will never understand Republicans who always say we don't want the government telling us what to do, but then comes to women making reproductive decisions. That does not apply. And, I said, you don't have the freedom to treat human beings like property, just like it was evil to dehumanize my ancestors and enslave them. It's evil to dehumanize the preborn, and act as though they are a handbag that you can choose to carry, switch out, and discard based on whether they match your plans. And FYI, if you're pregnant, reproduction has already occurred. Like, it's really easy to have used that into some kind of launching pad into modern sort of conservative convictions. But Haley just ain't got it, I guess. She just really ain't got it. And the last thing I think I want to say about this subject before moving on, because I guess we have been talking about it for a long time. It's basically all we've talked about. A lot of Democrats are doing victory laps and are dunking on Haley on this topic. And you shouldn't, because of who you voted for, because who sits in the White House. Because if you would recall, some years ago, Joe Biden was asked a question about how he was going to appeal to the southern states, and he had a very bizarre answer. So anytime you see Democrats talking about this Nikki Haley thing, you can still dunk on her. That's fine. It's a primary. If you don't, especially if you don't want her to win, like go ahead and dunk on Haley. But Biden here had a very interesting answer that if you don't know about, I'm glad to introduce you to this clip, and feel free to talk about it all the time.
And finally, Senator Biden, clear options right now. And finally, we got about 30 seconds left, but I can't let you go without some politics. As we've mentioned, you're in South Carolina right now on the campaign trail. 30 seconds or less. What kind of a chance would a northeastern liberal like Joe Biden stand in the South if you were running in Democratic primaries against Southerners like Mark Warner and John Edwards?
Better than anybody else. And you don't know my state. My state was a slave state. My state is a border state. My state is the 8th largest black population in the country. My state is anything from a northeast liberal state.
So
how are you going to appeal to Southern black Democrats? First thing that pops into Joe Biden's head, my state was a slave state. First thing that pops into this man's head, which, by the way, since we're on that subject, I do have a shirt that's about Joe Biden that you guys can't get at the website in long sleeve or short sleeve. I have the long sleeve version. It's Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden. It has a list of some of his racist remarks on the back, and that quote is on there on the back. So my state was a slave state, and it was a slave state. I mean, it's funny, we celebrate Juneteenth now, and people are like, oh, it's the day that slavery was abolished in the US, and or at least that's the rhetoric that some people have had. That's not what Juneteenth is. In Delaware was actually still a thing. Slavery was still a thing in Delaware on the date now that we even celebrate Juneteenth. So it's not the best day. Like, I understand people in like Texas celebrating Juneteenth, and they have for a while. I understand like Republicans at large taking it and doing some events here and there, because before it became like a holiday, our Republican Party has had some Juneteenth celebrations. But in this, Republican Party, it is like the shining achievement of our party, right? So more opportunities to say, hey, we did a good thing. I understand it, but it becoming the holiday and the central focus of like slavery is bad. Now it's over. It doesn't really make sense for it to be that day. There are better days for it to be. I don't know if people should have the amount of hostility that some people on the right have had for it, but or you should be more strategic in your hostility towards it. I definitely do not like the fact that more people are this is an opportunity for people to be misinformed about history. So yeah, Joe Biden is no one to talk. I'm pretty sure when he was tweeting, he tweeted, "It's about slavery. It wasn't him. It was probably Kareem, the press secretary," because we know from times when she meant to tweet things from her account that she tweeted it on the POTUS's account that she's the one who runs it. Not really surprising. Joe Biden is he's on vacay right now, actually. So he just left, I think, vacay to go on vacay. So he'll, be gone for the rest of the year, I believe. So pretty sure he didn't tweet at about Nikki Haley and this whole ordeal, but still from his account and still a Democrat who did it. So just FYI, Democrats, you have people in high office, the highest office in the land right now, who absolutely appealed to slavery and racism, thinking it was a positive and was going to get him elected. So this was obviously not from the 2020 race, but just hilarious. I see people are saying where they're from in the comments. I see you got a good crowd of folks from different places in the U.S. Curious if Miss South Carolina there is in, if you don't have to say if you don't want to, but I'm curious if you like Nikki Haley and if she's gonna get your support. But well, it was a really really terrible answer from Nikki Haley. And again, to the folks who are so ready to pounce on Republicans every time they say something that you don't like about history regarding slavery or civil rights or even things of now. I just besides pointing out the history of the Democrat Party having their hands like all over that stuff in the negative way, I think it's I've made this case before, and many people on the right, particularly pro-life people and particularly abolitionists, pro-life abolition, well, they don't consider themselves pro-life, but anti-abortion abolitionists, make the point that if you're for abortion, there's a good chance that you probably would have supported slavery back in the day. Because it really is about dehumanizing an individual and treating them as their property. And you have something that people felt was their right, and people who were trying to stop it because there was a human being involved. People were refusing to see, they were suppressing that truth within themselves. Whether they were saying, well, they don't deserve the rights because they're African Americans are subhuman or whatever excuses that they would use to be able to justify slavery continuing going on. People do that today with abortion, and there's so many parallels. I'm not saying they're the same thing. That's not what pro-life people are saying when they make comparisons, that they're the same thing. But they do require a similar mindset. And as I said earlier, people were really apathetic to the plight of the slave, and that's one reason why it could go on for so long. There's people who obviously profited from slavery, and it was tied up in a lot of the economy and other stuff like that, convenience for folks and so on. And there's people who weren't involved in it, but just that was the way of life. There's a lot of people who don't like abortion, but they still feel like it should be a right that's available. So we know these are our neighbors, that that preborn are human beings and alive. And Russell, I don't know his last name, but he's from Abolitionist Rising page. He gave a speech on abolition, and so many people who think they would be abolitionists and that they wouldn't really be abolitionists, and made a lot of it's a good speech. You guys can go look it up on his page. But he's like, if you think that you would have been an abolitionist, but you basically don't share any of the values and morals that these people had, that doesn't make any sense. So many of these Democrats, or just not just Democrats, I think there's a lot of Republicans who are very squishy on the subject, who probably would die off like the Whigs did. So I think we should rethink some things and have some conversations. Haley is pro-life, but I think squishy on the subject too, especially when she was on their first debate. that they had, and she's just kind of like, why can't everybody get along, and can't we all agree that this thing is bad and this thing is bad and this thing is bad? And she said, I wish I had the quote pulled up, but I did watch it today. One of the things she said, can we all agree that third trimester abortions are bad? No, everybody can't agree with that, because there's one, people get a lot of money for that, and two, if their justification is it's in a woman's body, therefore she should be able to do anything she wants, and that's their ethic. There's only two consistent positions. It's a life there, we should protect it. Then there's people who have different ideas about when that life starts, that they where they think it's sentience, a heartbeat, or when they can feel pain, or whatever. Scientifically, like, just objectively, they meet all the characteristics of life, conception, so that's really where we should protect the life. So that's the most consistent position. You maximize the most liberty by, if they can both live, they both should live. The other side that is the most consistent is no, full bodily autonomy for the woman. She gets to overrule the baby, and if it's in her body, she should be able to do whatever she wants. And that is basically the mainstream position of the Democrat Party. That's why they will say, trust the woman, trust her doctor. Gavin Newsom was asked by Sean Hannity on the debate stage with DeSantis, like, well, are you would you do late term? And what if it was a healthy baby? Because they'll try to say, well, those happen only because of tragic circumstances, which isn't true. And he's like, well, what if the baby's healthy? He just keeps going to trust the woman and her doctor, trust the woman and her doctor, etc. So I talked to my congresswoman. She didn't have any limitation. She wouldn't say that, but she, basically she didn't have to say it. Because I asked, like, at what point does a baby get any sort of rights? And she wouldn't say, my governor doesn't have any, like, sort of limitations. Everyone who's in Congress who's a Democrat, I think, except for one person abstained and one person, did one person vote no, or did just one person abstained? Basically every Democrat that's in Congress voted to not even support babies who survive abortions. So they're very, very radical on position on the far end of the spectrum. So no, and everybody can't agree with and you're not going to get everybody to agree with something. At some point you have to have some kind of moral conviction, and someone has to win and someone has to lose. But to compromise on, like, whether we can murder certain people is kind of bizarre to me. It's kind of bizarre to me. So and she kept saying that we have to be honest with people, and we're not going to get enough people to end abortion or something, or pass something and at the federal level. And that was her way of sidestepping, I guess, what she would do, by just being like, we got to be honest with people. And she also said something like, can't we all agree that you shouldn't criminalize a woman? Now, that the abolitionist view, and I'm sorry to kind of go off on this tangent, is that you have to do equal justice, and whoever commits the abortion should face the penalty. And if a woman is alone who gets an abortion pill in her room, there is no abortionist. She is the abortionist. So and it's pro-life laws that basically give women immunity for having abortion. So I guess a good question if anyone wants to squeeze into a Nikki Haley town hall is if, like, there was a story of a mother who got abortion pills for her daughter, and the mother got jail, and the daughter also got jail, but she got 90 days because they tried to burn and bury the body. And so the daughter wasn't charged for the abortion. She was just charged for how they treated the baby's body, but the mother was actually charged as the abortionist who aided in the abortion. So let's say her mother didn't help her, and the baby was like at 29 weeks. So that's pretty late. So Nikki Haley thinks that at that point in time, everyone should agree that's a bad thing. So, but let's just say she planned it all on herself, did it herself, and she even didn't decide to do it, like, in her room in secrecy. Let's say she did it in front of the sheriff and took the pills to abort her baby at 29 weeks. According to Nikki Haley, she should receive no penalty for that. She should have immunity for that. Ultimately, does that sound like a feasible solution in the end? If we want to get rid of it, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. So If anyone wants to sneak in a Nikki Haley town hall, I think that one will really throw her off her game. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. I just really quickly wanted to show this clip of the mayor of Chicago, who Mayor Brandon Johnson, who is upset about the border crisis. Now he has blame. He's trying to not. The Democrats are really trying not to blame Biden and blame Governor Abbott for like sending people to New York and sending people to Chicago and all these areas to make them live out their ethic of a sanctuary city. But it's basically obviously too much for them. New York has been complaining. Chicago's been complaining, and they really, really want some kind of assistance. So here he is acknowledging that reality.
To meet this demand. But we have reached a critical point in this mission that absent real significant intervention immediately, our local economies are not designed and built to respond to this type of crisis. We are literally building a system as we go along. I commend Mayor Johnston and Mayor.
Yeah, so he's saying we're not built this way, and in New York they've been begging for money, and Biden will at some point. I'm telling you, they're probably going to do some kind of big bailout to help New York and other stuff. Schumer wanted, and people from there's plenty of people in the Congress and stuff from New York. Some deal will probably happen to send money. Especially Biden will want that because he will want his constituents happy, and they're not doing anything to fix the border issue. I talked about this maybe last week, that there was a woman from Colombia who legally crossed over, and her lawyer claimed that she had a legitimate asylum claim, but ICE didn't give her a check-in date until like 8 years into the future. So it just goes to show you how backed up things are. And it's somebody I left a comment on a video I did about, and they're like, anchor babies everywhere, perhaps, probably. And at that point in time, when you're in the country for so long, people feel bad, and they're just like, well, just maybe we can give them amnesty and etc. We're just creating a system. It is a huge crisis, but it's one at this point. Is there a way kind of back from it? Because so many people have come into the country. AOC was trying to say that wasn't an invasion and wasn't a crisis. So let me play a bit of her video that someone clipped together talking about this issue.
Want to say, why aren't you talking about the border crisis? Or why aren't you talking about it in this way? Well, we're talking about it. They just don't like how we're talking about it, because it's not a border crisis. It's an imperialism crisis. It's a climate crisis. It's a trade crisis. This is not a surge. These are children, and they are not insurgents, and we are not being invaded, which, by the way, is a white supremacist idea, philosophy.
I think the residents, the Black and brown residents of New York and Chicago, who just had enough of so many people coming in, taking up space because they don't belong there, would think differently. And if you look at these videos with the caravans of people, the people who come in, it was like, thank you, Biden, thank you, Biden. Many of them are not children. Many of them are adult males coming over for economic opportunities. I get it. Who wouldn't want to be in America, right? But you have to come in the right way, and you don't start off by coming in absolutely illegally. That's not how you start off trying to come to a new nation. You got to wait in line, wait your turn. We don't know all these people who are coming over. We don't know, I don't know what diseases they could be carrying. We don't know what kind of crimes they have committed, or we don't know if they're terrorists coming in, which they have stopped terrorists at the border. So how many are we not catching? And think about the drugs that are flowing in. There's people who come over. There are kids who come over, but the kids aren't even always coming with their families. They'll come over with coyotes. And just a flashback when there was a second debate with Trump and Biden, and the story just dropped. right before the debate. So I knew they're going to bring it up about how there were some, I don't remember the number, but there were some kids who were still not reunited with their families. So at the debate, they asked Trump about it. And Trump was like, some of these people didn't even come with their families. They came with coyotes. And then on the internet, there were David Hogg and other folks, too many folks. I wonder if I still have the screenshot saved up here in this program. Let me look real quick. We're saying things like coyotes. How would a coyote bring a whole child over the border? And so at that point in time, I was really concerned about our nation. And I was like, oh, we are really, really being run by some fools, because someone was like a Democrat legislator who didn't know what a coyote was. And then there were people who were so upset about the border issue, so much that they're like, this is the number one reason why I get this man out of office. And you don't even know enough about it to know what a coyote is. If you don't know what a coyote was and didn't know what it was until I started talking about this, that's fine. I'm not begrudging you for not knowing it. But so many people, again, were so passionate about the issue that it was like their number one thing, the most inhumane thing that happened. But you don't even know enough to be educated to know that people are brought over by people who aren't their parents, that you pay people and they're basically trafficking the children, and all sorts of horrible things happen to the children. They're abused, etc. while they come up here. And those people who bring them are called coyotes. I'm not talking about Wile E. Coyote. They're coyotes. And it was just wild. So yes, we do have a crisis, and to pretend that these aren't like adult men coming over is just absolutely insane. Last thing I want to mention before I let you go, I had heard that Lauren Boebert was not going to be running in her seat again, and I made the case after the whole Beetlejuice thing that she probably shouldn't. And her race was very, very close last time. People thought that she was going to lose. It was like to the wire with how close her race ended up being. So with her race not being so red, and the controversy, I just thought it would be best at that point if she stepped aside. And you can love her and be like, no, she should still fight. Like, sometimes you got to do what's best for the party. And if she's not the one who can run and win in that seat, then someone else should run in that seat. And that's that, because we don't want to lose our majority. It's already slim. Sometimes you have to make the choice that is best for the party, and people can't always go out there to satisfy their own egos. You're in a big tent, but you're playing for a team though. And you got to represent your district and all that stuff. But you are playing for a team. So I thought she should just kind of bow out. So I was a little comforted and excited when I heard she wasn't running her seat anymore. But I found out she is still running. She's just going to run in a different seat altogether. So she's going to run in the Colorado 4th congressional district now, because the seat is open because Ken Buck is retiring. So and her Democrat challenger has raised, I guess, a lot more money than her, etc. So that'll be an easier race for her to win. But I don't know, people need to kind of reflect, why was her race so close, and why is it looking like she probably won't win? So some people didn't think the Beetlejuice thing was a big deal, and I don't think that's the reason why. Obviously that wasn't the reason why her election was so close, because this happened afterwards. But I thought, when you go out there trying to represent like conservative values and that's like it was supposed to be a big thing of our platform or the rhetoric or whatever. To some people it's just a thing to get votes, and that's not how they really live their life. But she was also like really obnoxious and other stuff in the theater, and then try to say that stuff didn't happen, and then it did happen, and it was just a hot mess. But man, they were that wasn't appropriate. And some people are like, well, people fool around in theaters. That's not, just because people do doesn't mean it's right. But it just wasn't a smart thing to do. It wasn't a smart thing. And And if you're a Christian woman, I would assume that you would tamper down such things, not get too heated like that, or else you might be a little too tempted to go too far. So there was just a lot of things happening where I'm like, it would probably be best if she just kind of bowed out, but she's not. So she's just running in another district. So I don't know if it's challenged right now, but I don't really personally would like her to be the nominee there. So anyway, that's about it today. That's about it. Someone says she voted to extend the government's ability to spy on America without a warrant. She's kind of a bummer. They could definitely get someone else. They could definitely get someone else. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. As I said, I do write some books. So to give a little more background on my historical fiction fantasy book that takes place during the Civil War, the main character is Charlotte. So when she was a young girl, she was purchased by a woman named Lady Cohen. And so she believes she's supposed to like mind the house and all that kind of different stuff. When she gets older, she realizes she was actually selected because she has a special ability. And so I guess I won't say what it is, but she ends up finding out that there's more people like her. And even though slavery and Civil War and all that stuff is a terrible thing, there's even a bigger threat to her safety because of this like zealots who believe that her kind are like an abomination. So again, it's kind of like if you can imagine like X-Men meets American Civil War, and then the sequel is The Song on the Devil's Lips, and it covers like the draft riots and all kinds of cool stuff that's in the book. So it's available on Amazon on paperback and ebook, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, that's also available there as well if you have a subscription to that. So go ahead and check it out. I have 17 books that are published altogether. 2 are nonfiction. One of my books that are nonfiction is my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. So you guys can check that out. That's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And go to my website, check out different articles that I've written, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website. It does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff. So if you guys can support in that way, I very much do appreciate it and appreciate you guys. And I suppose that's it. Shout out to oh, thank you, Kit Kat. Appreciate that and appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, I love to write. So I have to get to more writing. I have a wall in my room, like of course I have a wall in my room. I have a bulletin board, I guess, in my room, a cork board, I guess. And it has like a plot of all these different book ideas, and it has years and like when I'm supposed to finish one and release one. I have to update it because I was slacking, I guess. But especially, well, not slacking, but like when I wrote of course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, that like totally that wasn't like planned out. That was just more like a conviction that I had to do. So that really like altered my plans a lot. But yeah, I've got so many ideas, and I've got things that I haven't started because I'm like, I gotta finish this series before I get to this one. So I will always be writing. It's a huge passion of mine. So I thank you to all of you who have been interested, and those of you who checked out some of my books and went ahead and reviewed them, especially like I know in particular people have checked out Super Kid for their families, their grandkids, their kids, and the kids have really liked it. So that one's also near and dear to my heart. It's actually the first book that I published, Super Kid, and it's loosely based off stories about my dad. Oh, by the way, it's my parents' anniversary, so shout out to them. It is the 28th, right? Yeah, it is their anniversary. So they've been married 43 years now, I believe. So I wrote an article last year about them, so I'm gonna go ahead and repost that. But yeah, very happy marriage between the two of them. My dad is kind of bummed though because his TV went out and he wants to watch the Rose Bowl game on it. So it died, I think, the day after Christmas. So but they'll be going out celebrating their anniversary. Thank you in the comments. Yeah, they've been together a long time, so very happy marriage between them. Very grateful for my parents, and blessings to you all. And I will see you tomorrow. I guess it'll be the last, I guess, live political stream of the year. I was kind of thinking about talking about Variety has did a best TV. I think it was Variety did a list of best TV shows. I haven't seen the full list. I know what's not on the list. So I thought about reacting to that and asking some other people to react to the list with me. So I might do that. So there might be like another live stream that's not political related. But tomorrow will be like our last Black Tea news show. So of 2023, and then things will get really interesting in 2024. So it should be a good day tomorrow. God bless you, and I'll see you then.